All right, welcome everybody. It's Jeff from Pure Yoga Talk at Pure Yoga Texas in our downtown Austin studio. I have the pleasure of speaking with Gianna Purcell. Gianna Purcell, thank you, Gianna, for coming and gracing us with your presence.
Always happy to be here with you.
All right, happy New Year 2025.
Yeah, same.
A lot of 2024 was an interesting year for a lot of us, for me personally. Marty and I, and we love to have you come and show us all the new things that you're up to. So let me just give people a little quick synopsis of this weekend with Gianna. So you led a few of our Hot 90 classes, right? Original Hot Yoga, the Bikram style, 90 minutes. And you're always such a crowd pleaser, you always draw the crowd. So we had overbooked classes. And then today, we just finished a functional range conditioning class from the Kinstretch, or known as Kinstretch. I had a great experience. Why don't you tell everybody what that is, how you got into it, and what does it mean to you personally and your practice?
Yeah, what's interesting is, before the pandemic, I started teaching just hatha classes. So I was teaching, Bikram for 12 years at that point, and then had kind of moved into practicing and teaching more Shivananda-based things that were really kind of subtle hatha practices with combinations of, breath work and mantra and all that kind of stuff. And there was always this kind of pull in of things like PNF, stretching, like more PT stuff, like more therapeutic movements. And so just kind of diving into that way of moving so that we're kind of training to prepare for things instead of just like pose was how I ended up starting to teach my hatha classes. And as I was just looking at different ways to learn more of those aspects of PT or ways to move, everyone's like, oh, animal flow is the new whatever. It's like just coming back to our bodies in ways that are going to help us sustain life and be more versatile. I found functional range conditioning. And so as the pandemic kind of grew, I started chatting with people that were trained in it and teaching it on its own from like other, not yoga-based movement practices. And then when I moved back to Tucson, there's one guy there. His name's Nick Hulk. He's a personal trainer. He's been doing it forever. He works a lot with fighters and impact sports. And he does assessments with people that he learned from. There's all sorts of, so functional range conditioning is the like system as its whole, or functional range, work. And then there's different aspects of that. Kinstretch is one of the ways that they use to teach it in a class setting. Otherwise, ideally, it was used as a one-on-one thing. So I met with him after doing some of these different practices that I picked up from different teachers and classes that I've taken to help my own body, to do an assessment with him because I was having some knee stuff and whatever. And he did, and like you would have to do like the FRA program to start assessing people, and he's done all of the modules basically. And so I worked with him in that way, and I was like, I'm not that type of person that if you tell me to do something and I don't understand it fully, that I'll do it. I just am the type of person where I'm like, I need to actually know. Okay. So then I started studying or going down the path of that work with that system, and it's not reinventing the wheel. It's not making things up. All of the movements that we're doing have been done by somebody in some way in PT or personal training or whatever it is, to get people to feel better. This system has just been over-researched to get things to land better on people's bodies and work with finding the balance of strength and flexibility. And so they've gone through a bunch of research, not done the research, but gone through a bunch of the research to figure out how we move best and what we can do to move better. And that's that's basically functional range conditioning. But Kinstretch is the one part of it that is the public class, and that's getting people to increase their workspace, like we were talking about today. What is your range potential, and where do you actually have workability, meaning where within that space do you have strength, and how can we increase that together instead of just always being like, yeah, sure, hold this passive stretch for however long and you'll find space eventually. So it's being more scientific about moving, which is what I always tried to do, is just be more purposeful with moving instead of being like a choreographer for a class where it's like, this is cool, and then you can do that because that's cool, and then you're here, so you may as well do that. And it's like, well, are you really prepared to do that thing? Because I want people to move better for longer, which is basically all the functional range conditioning people are trying to do.
That's great. Longevity.
Yeah.
Is a good word. One of the concepts you talked about today was, as you said, increasing the workspace. Especially for yoga practitioners, and one of the participants today, very bendy, very flexible,
right,
can fall into postures very easily. And what she found was the emphasis on taking your range to that point and strengthening and accessing strength at that end range.
Right.
It's a simple concept, and it makes so much sense,
yeah,
but nobody really puts it into this kind of this package.
Right, and right? I think when you do something else, like whether you're a gymnastics coach or a yoga teacher or a personal trainer or a physical therapist, whatever it is, if you can keep seeing these concepts within the context of your class or your offering, you can use the system simply, its concepts, to help people move. We've tried to get people to kick and standing bow forever, but we're not actually focusing on where they're kicking from, what it is they're stretching, if they're using muscles there, if they're hanging off of something. We've been using just cues to get people to hold a position for a long time. That's why people say kick and stretch, which means nothing. What am I kicking? What am I stretching? Where am I kicking? Where am I stretching? There's so little weight in that, but we're timekeepers at this point.
Yeah.
So we're just helping people stay in a pose, which I don't know if that's helpful, And
that brings me to a point we talked about off camera. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when the Bikram yoga world was really starting to blow up. And there were hundreds of teachers coming out of a teacher training. The idea of quality control was a big point, and I can see how important that was. To have the teachers come out and teach the dialogue, teach people beginners how to get in to a posture, how long to hold it, and how to get out of the posture. Some very basic instructions to cue. Right. I think there's tremendous value in that. In creating a system that is, for the most part, generally fairly uniform.
Right.
But over the last 10 to 15 years, I think the world needs to evolve, just like any systems should evolve. And this brings me to you. And every time you would come back and visit us in Austin, you were always coming back with some new information, some new studies, some new, everything that you do, you're always seeking and searching new knowledge. And you'd come back and you would incorporate that into your class. And I've seen this evolution of you. And we also at Pure have been evolving.
Of course.
Slowly.
It's hard
slowly
not to,
but steady, but it's hard not to, right? And I think that is an important part of where we are today.
Yeah, even seeing the expansion and the changes in your business, we were teaching, when I talk about this with like people that own yoga studios that have been Vinyasa forever, that teach like something different all the time, I'm like, we had, 9, 10, 11 classes a day, and they were all 90-minute Bikram classes, which is so awesome. You know,
Pretty
it was
cool.
so crazy. And people just like changed so fast because they were dissecting this set of positions on their bodies so that they could really do the work in this concentrated environment. You know, it's like, try these poses every day for the next 7 years and let's see what happens. And that can continue. You know, your business has expanded to where now Pure has so many different, there's weights over here, you know, like there's so many things under one roof. And that, I think, is one of the more important things of growth, is that we recognize, I'm sorry, but it's not just one thing forever, because you're not one way forever.
Right.
So you can't one thing forever, right? That doesn't mean that the system isn't good anymore because you've changed. It means now you have to tackle the system from a different avenue, or with a different mindset, or with a different body. That's the concept of being like, you know, okay, I don't want you to kick and stretch and come down until your body's down parallel to the floor. I want you to kick and stretch so that you actually lengthen your thigh, that you actually contract your back muscles, that you actually feel stretch and space across your shoulder. I don't care if your shoulder doesn't touch your chin, that's where we're going, but we need to max out your spine and extension with access to rotation while you keep your head straight, right? The shoulder will land where it lands until it lands somewhere else later. But that wasn't how we were teaching this before, right? It was just like, get top foot over bottom foot, standing bow. Get your body down parallel to the floor. Lock out your knee, and we see those two things, and we're like 10, you know? And it's like, I don't know if that's helping us as we age.
Right.
You know, you can do that when you're a kid.
Yes. Yeah.
But if you do that in later stages of life and you tweak something, you're going to be bummed, and that will affect you for the rest of life.
That's right.
So, yeah, it's a natural evolution, I think.
Yeah, it's a natural evolution, especially of the, hate to say, the aging process. Here we are now, 15, 20 years older, and we all experience different body traumas or injuries. You had your motorcycle accident, right? And you recovered miraculously, spectacularly from it. I've experienced a knee injury that I've been working on this last year.
Right.
And it really highlighted to me how important it is to have more dynamic range, motion,
more variables.
Strength, more variables. You got to throw in all the variables, every twist, every turn, every loading up weights, and that's why we're leaning hard into that. And all the science and research is pointing in that direction.
Right.
And as yoga teachers, it's almost irresponsible for us not to incorporate this new information.
Totally. Even the research has changed. Like, I don't go to a chiropractor often. Like, we had, what's her name here, right? Who's always staying up to date on the research and always doing work. But the information that a chiropractor 12 plus years ago got in their program versus now is, you know, you'd be like, it's kind of obsolete, the thing that I've created my business around. You should probably shift, because the research has grown and changed. Even pain research has grown and changed. And there's so many things that yoga teachers say based around pain, where it's like, oh, you know, if it hurts, you're doing it right. Or if it doesn't hurt, then you're doing it wrong. Or if it hurts, back off. Like, all this stuff centered around pain, but there's so much research done on like nervous system stuff and, you know, end range work that there's so many variables that have been researched now, opposed to just 10 years ago. That's very recent, that we have to change, not just because we're older, but because the facts have changed.
Yep. The material is new. So you're clearly pumping iron and lifting some weights.
Thank you.
Right? I could see it. I mean, since the last time I saw you, you've definitely, you know, put on some strength. So, how much time are you spending in the gym versus on the yoga mat? Yeah,
it's so fun. The stuff that I'm doing in the gym, I think people are like, interesting choice. But I'm in there probably 4 times a week, and on my mat about 4 times a week. And it varies in time. I've always had trouble with cardio. As a kid, as a gymnast, I had the hardest time with my lungs. I had pneumonia when I was like 6 or something, and they're like, you have the lungs of a smoker. And I was like, I'm 6. So I've had these kind of like weird things that I haven't been, or you know, we exercise that in yoga for sure, in the 26 and 2 at least. And though I haven't challenged myself to run. So I actually, besides doing weights like once or twice a week, I will run, which I hate. But it's a post-apocalyptic skill that I think is very important. If I can't run from someone or something, I'm gonna have a problem. So yeah, I'm like exercising my full potential in a different way now. And I lifted weights in high school, and I think I haven't since. So what, 25, 27 years ago. And so that's another reason that I'm like, oh, this was fun for me at some point. Why isn't texting my body in a different way fun anymore? And it's because I've decided that it's not. And so now that I'm actually like nerding out about it, I'm just finding potential in a different way, and that is always fun to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know that I have distinct goals necessarily. I have, you know, what we talk about the aging process, and we get to do it, which is cool. My parents died before I was 30, so I don't actually know what aging for me is going to be like, because at some point I thought I would just get sick and die. But now I know, because I've been tested for these diseases and things like that, I know that I'm going to get old and die, unless, you know, factors happen, as they do. So I want to do that the best I can. And if I'm every year challenging myself in a different way, not only am I physically going to be better as I age, but I'm mentally going to be better as I age, because neurologically, the more you do the same thing all the time and never even just take another route home, the more you're kind of calcifying your frontal lobe into everything has to be like this, and you become a crotchety old person, and I don't want to be that either, you know? So yeah, it's kind of going to the gym and strengthening my ability to move is a way for me to just be older and better.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more exciting.
It is.
Yeah.
I used to lift a lot of weights when I was young, and then since yoga was probably 15 years since I've lifted a weight in any, you know, measured way.
Right.
I used to run because Marty liked to run. So this was the only reason I ran, was
like,
because
bonding.
Marty liked to run. I was like, okay. She said, I like to run. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll do that too. And I just challenged myself, even though I'd hated it.
Yeah.
Okay. But those kind of things were fun, just to take on new challenges, take on new physical activities, just for the sake of doing it.
Yeah.
And just working your body in different ways. And I lost a lot of that over the last 15 years in yoga, and I think this is the danger. Some people who get so deep into yoga, you know, maybe chasing poses. I was definitely chasing poses.
Oh yeah, we were.
Right. I think we all were chasing poses, but it was fun.
It was fun.
It was still fun. It was it was a period of time. Exercising in so many different ways. Same with you. I went out and ran. I started running a little bit here and there, and it's so invigorating.
Yeah.
And one day, this is a horror story. Thanksgiving, I ran the turkey trot, and it's a 5-mile run. And before that, I hadn't run for like more than like 2 miles.
I feel like everyone does this at the turkey trot.
Yes.
They're like, I haven't trained.
I haven't trained.
I'll do this for Thanksgiving.
I ran 5 miles, and I almost died. Right? But it was a beautiful feeling, like that you take your body, you crush it, and then you have to feel better. And then that process of getting better, it makes you excited about something new.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what we did in the 90 minutes. You know, you struggled through something that you were like, I'm dying. And then everyone finished it together, and you're like, we did it, you know? That was amazing. We'll do it tomorrow. Yeah.
So that is, and then we've got so many goals now with Pure that this year in 2025, adding a lot more strength training classes.
Awesome.
We're adding Katie Phillips, who is that Egoscue therapist, and from her South studio.
Yeah.
She was in the class today, in the sessions today. She has, like physical therapy, a lot of different simple exercises. Maybe it's 10 to 20 minutes a day.
Yeah.
She'll diagnose your posture, and the whole goal is to improve your posture.
Okay.
Improve your posture and your range of motion, and to live pain-free and also to help recover from injuries and imbalances that you have in your body. And she's going to start teaching a weekly class here to get people maybe unstuck. Oftentimes you might find a practitioner, yoga practitioner, where they go up that steep learning curve for the first 3 to 6 months, and they love it.
Yeah.
Then they hit a plateau, they hit a wall.
Right.
And where do we go from here? Until you start to dissect maybe some of their habits in their body and imbalances and muscles that aren't firing or just dead asleep.
Right.
Yeah, not even talking about the functional range of motion, the widening the workspace, just some muscles that are dead asleep. And so there's some heavy lifting to do there that can accelerate their practice, another 6 months, and then they hit another plateau. Right? So we got to give them the tools.
Right. It's the way that we would look at a body would be like, well, what are your habits keeping you in? And not necessarily are your muscles like sleepy, but where is it that you move best from that is actually creating problems for you? And that your muscles are doing their job, but there are always other muscles that are stronger than those muscles. Right. Yeah, so when you look at someone in the first however long of their practice, the first 3 months or 3 weeks or whatever it is, however long they're coming, you look at someone and you see, wow, you're different. You look different, you're breathing different, you're standing different, you look happier. And then that plateau, I think, comes not because of them, they're still doing the work, but because of us as teachers. And teachers do not progress as fast as students do unless they're also doing the work. And this is the problem with the Bikram series, is that you can come in and not think about your class if you're teaching it. Because it's the same thing that you taught the last 3 months if you're a new teacher, right? You're like, okay, let me walk in and do what I did yesterday. But if you, in those 3 months, are also working on your teaching actively, working to understand movement science and anatomy and breath capacity and concentration and consciousness understanding, you will move forward as a teacher. But often within that system of teaching, you just work it until you feel better at that same thing. So we as teachers can fail our students often, and we are the reason they plateau. Now, ideally, having things like that they didn't know existed under the same roof opens a whole nother avenue of ability for them, because they wouldn't have known it existed if it wasn't here under their roof. Because a lot of us that have to pay for membership somewhere, we don't want to pay a bunch of memberships at a bunch of places and learn more things to be better at the thing that we do love, which is, the yoga or whatever it is. So because you have all of this now under one roof, it actually exists to them because it didn't before. And so now they can get people that are diving deeply into this one thing that is, maybe not yoga or it's training, whatever it is. So they can do the work for themselves, because we cannot take responsibility for everyone's progress. That's too much pressure.
That is.
Right?
Yeah, and you can't say, well, now I have to acquire this knowledge and this knowledge and this knowledge to...
It's overwhelming.
It can be way too much.
Yeah.
So sometimes you need to bring in the specialists, the experts, to round it out and put it all under one place.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the... I think that's why, we were talking about it before, where it's like, I can't stop learning. And I wish it was mostly because I'm bored. I wish it was mostly because of me. But it's actually because of everyone else. Because if somebody comes to me and I can't help them, I'll send them somewhere else. I'll be like, I helped you as much as I can. I think this is actually what you need. And I will never be a specialist in that, because my focus is in my lane over here. But what I'm seeing as I continue to see people one-on-one, I would say I started doing privates like 2 years into my teaching or something. And just very rudimentary, helping them with their positions and with their breath and with their focus. Very easy. But as you see more and more people and your lens widens, you see more and more problems.
Yeah.
And so the more I have to offer people to assess where they are and what their problems are and how we can fix them, the more I'm doing my job better. I might not be an expert in functional range conditioning, but it is something that I am studying and something that I am teaching and that I'm constantly learning. And so someday, like I can say, I can teach the 26 and 2 anywhere, anytime, like that. I'm not ashamed to say that I'm an expert in that series of movements. I can help anyone do those postures and feel better in them. And I'm working to be that same way in a functional range way, and as an Ayurvedic consultant, and at some point as a therapist. So when I see and understand people, and the better I get at working with people, just like any of us working in our business or, you know, working in our classes, people start to open up more to us. And with that comes a lot of responsibility. So I have been now burdened with responsibility. And so I'm like, okay, I need to help you more, because when I opened the avenue to Ayurvedic consulting, I was like, whoa, I'm asking them about their childhood, because otherwise there's no way for me to get an idea of what their prakriti and their vikriti is, what their natural state was, and what their current imbalance is. So if we're opening that so that I can better understand them, I better have the skills to hold what is being opened, you know? And so I think as we help our students more, our clients more, our patients more, we have to realize our responsibility and rise to that occasion, right? So I would love to stop learning and just, like, I don't know,
chill out on the beach.
Live in the trees somewhere. But
well, so you mentioned, and I can see now why you're kind of going into this therapy, right? As if you're going to be opening up with someone's childhood, then was that the prompt, or tell us more?
Yeah, I would say, so I have a lot of friends that during the pandemic, they did their clinical counseling masters. And some of them were encouraging me to do the same, because I was doing death doula work.
Right.
And so I had this, or I have this death doula or death mortality education program that I was doing with some of them. And they were like, you do realize that you're doing counseling work right now, you know? And I was like, I mean, I guess so. And a lot of people that do that, I think too, within like yoga land, a lot of them are like, I'll be a life coach or whatever, which I think there's a lot of parallel things happening there. And I come from a family of doctors and scientists. Like, my mom was a chemist, my dad was a biologist, my sister's a neuroscientist. And as floofy woofy as I am, where I'm like, well, have you tried Nadi Shodhana? You know, and they're like, whatever. Or, you know, how steeped I am in like the study and the interest of consciousness, I still have this need to have things make sense on both realms, because I'm a human and an aware conscious being that is studying being steeped in my consciousness. And so if I'm not lifting both those things up, then I'm too far on one side, which feels imbalanced for me.
Got it.
So I'm doing there's so much more to learn from, and while there's many problems with academia, there's many problems with yoga teacher trainings, all of it is problematic in its own way, right? We all are. And I want to know the information that I'm not getting from the work that I am doing, right? Yeah. And I think moving down a counseling realm will give me more skills and have a whole different avenue of access to people that are trying to do work in a more holistic sense. Because I do want to run a holistic therapy practice where it is like, well, when I'm working with people Ayurvedically, I'm talking to them about their habits, their lifestyle, their routine, their foods. It's everything. And it's really hard to help people in a therapy setting when they have horrible habits and horrible they're putting horrible food in their body. And it's also really hard to help people with improper food digestion issues when we're not assessing all of this trauma and, habitual relationship patterns that they keep walking into. It's just, there's so many aspects of us being alive that it's stimulating to me to go down all of the avenues to understand that. Because with Ayurveda, I studied it's a sub sect of Vedic science where it's like consciousness and human potential in regards to quantum physics. And so they've paralleled Vedic literature with quantum mechanics and quantum physics to key and research, but understand and explain how the literature of the Veda talks about pure consciousness at the deepest level, where all things come from at pure consciousness, where all matter and the elements come from, in relationship to the unified field in physics, in quantum physics, and superstring theory, where all matter vibrates from, and where all elements come from, basically. And so these scientists have laid those two things over because they've been studying meditation and are quantum physicists. Yeah. So that's like the stimulating thing for me, where I'm like, how many other places can I do that in? Yeah. Overlay ancient wisdom with current science.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the quantum physicists and the astrophysicists, the very big and the very small, they've come together, and usually by the end of their their nonstop search for what they've looked for, the truth, is pretty simple. They all arrive in the same place, right?
Yeah, and if you go through Vedic understanding, whether you're reading the Atharvaveda or you're reading the Bhagavad Gita, like whatever it is, they all talk about these states of consciousness. And we are gifted the waking state, the sleeping state, and the dream state. And we have to work to keep going back to the transcendental state. And so the Bhagavad Gita talks about the fourth, and the fourth is the fourth state of consciousness. And Vedic literature talks about what to do to reach this kind of transcendence, and that's the transcendental state of consciousness. And so there's this understanding of what we character-wise take ourselves out of by existing ego, talking to each other and being like, here's my personality, how it pulls us away from taking a seat in our consciousness, and why so many of us suffer so greatly, because we are so steeped in this stuff. So there's the depths of us that we're missing, which is always there. Yeah, it's cool. I mean, existing is so fun. It's a wild ride.
So now you are in Tucson.
I'm in Tucson.
You're in Tucson. You've been there for how long now?
I moved back there in 2018, or I moved there in 2018, and then I left. I owned that studio in Miami for like a year and a half, and then I moved back in 2020. So I was there. The pandemic started. I bought my house right before that, and then I scooted out of Miami to back to Tucson.
So Tucson, you teach yoga. You do one-on-one personal training, private training with people. You also do the 105F teacher training, right? You run that. Where is it going to be this year?
This year we were going to do it in Bali, and there are some
issues with that.
Issues with working there, and I want to always respect that, because I think it's very good for Bali to have some limitations on people's ability to work there, because it's a tiny little island that has gotten very busy. But so next year it'll be in Mexico.
Oh, great.
But I also do my own trainings, like hatha trainings that have incorporated a lot of functional range conditioning understanding and Kinstretch movements, and a lot of like Shivananda movements, postures, breath work, mantra, and then like Ayurvedic understanding and stuff like that. And so I just finished one of those in India this past year. So
So you're integrating everything now.
Yeah, I can't teach what I've always taught in the way that I've taught it before if I am somewhere else in my practice of it.
Yeah.
So everything, like every single time I have to rewrite a manual. It's really aggravating. But yeah, so I do that. I do a week-long advanced intensive every year, just get people together to practice those poses, and we always do a prep series that has a lot to do with Kinstretch and prepping joint spaces for different movements. We break different series down, and yeah, so I do that once a year, and yeah, all the Ayurvedic counseling and things like that. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And just a personal testimonial, just after today's workshop, I had been dealing with a knee ligament thing, and I found today, during that workshop, with some of the CARS movements that we were doing with the knees, and the strength movements that we were doing, I found my deepest squat today in like a year.
Yeah, cool.
So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So I feel like I feel the need to search more on
get into the minute
FRC
stuff.
and just kind of see what's and start incorporating some of that movement.
Yeah, you'd love it, and you'd be great at teaching it too.
Cool.
So yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
All right.
Yeah, happy to be here with you always.
Always happy that you're here, and maybe the next year when you're back, we'll do it again.
I'd love to.
Because I'd love to hear what else is new in the
Sure.
Gianna world.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff.
Cool.
Yeah, appreciate you.
Thanks. Thank you all, and you'll find Gianna Purcell give us your info, where to find you.
Just giannayoga.com and info@giannayoga.com, and anything you're interested in knowing more, I'm happy to share.
Yay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all. Bye.